So good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining today's webinar. We will get started on time in 10 minutes, so hold tight.
How's my background noise, Jill? Can you hear the birds chirping? Should I shut the door?
No, I mean, I can't hear anything. I think you're good.
I hear a cat playing a piano.
Gotta add some pizzazz to the webinar.
Intro.
Okay, well, we're at the top of the hour, so we're going to get started. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Increasing Cover Crop Sales for Ag Retailers, Opportunities for Revenue, Soil Health, and Water Quality. My name is Jill Carlson, and I'm the project coordinator at the Partnership for Ag Resource Management, who is hosting the webinar this morning. We're joined today by my colleagues, Dr. Thomas Green, Mark Adelsberger, and Krista Korleski. Shortly, Dr. Thomas Green, President and co-founder of the IPM Institute, will provide a brief introduction to the Partnership for Ag Resource Management. I'm also pleased to welcome our guest speakers. First, we will hear from Dean Baas, Senior Research Associate at Michigan State University Extension and member of the Midwest Cover Crops Council Executive Committee. Second, we will hear from Steve Groff, founder of Cover Crop Solutions. Then we will have 10 to 15 minutes for good Q&A. Before we begin, I wanted to share some brief logistics. You will remain muted as an audience member during the presentations, but please make use of the chat box on your screen to type questions for the speakers. Please indicate if the question is directed at Dean or Steve, please. I will moderate the questions at the end of the presentations. This webinar is being recorded and will be available afterward on partnershipfarm.org. And by attending the webinar today, you will be eligible for 2.5 CCA continuing education units. An email containing a webinar evaluation and form to sign up to receive those CEU points will be sent out following the webinar. So definitely take a look at that. With all of that out of the way, now I will turn it over to Dr. Thomas Green to kick it off.
Well, thanks, Jill, and thanks everybody for joining us today, including our presenters. So I'll do a short few-minute introduction here to our project and our organization. I founded the IPM Institute back in 1998, and Partnership for Ag Resource Management is one of our efforts, along with a host of other projects in agriculture and communities with many collaborators, including food companies, pest control companies, school systems, and others. All of our projects are focused on using the power of the marketplace to improve sustainability, including health, environment, and economics. You might have read one or more of our articles in a series for Crops and Soils magazine, which is the publication for CCAs. So we face a real challenge in the Great Lakes, Mississippi River, Chesapeake Bay, and other watersheds. Nutrient and soil resources that we need for our crops are leaving cropland and ending up in our rivers, lakes, and streams. These photos show what happens when too much phosphorus gets into the water, feeding blooms of algae which close beaches to swimming, make fishing a challenge, and have also shut down public water supplies, including Toledo last summer. The graph from Heidelberg University's water monitoring stations shows the trend of dissolved reactive phosphorus reaching the mouth of the Sandusky River in Ohio since 1975. So after declining in the mid-80s with the rapid adoption of reduced tillage, it's been increasing over the past 15 years, and along with it, algal bloom. So certainly there are multiple sources of phosphorus in our watersheds, but we know that the bulk of this phosphorus is coming primarily from cropland because of the timing of the loading. They spike during snowmelt and rain events in winter and early spring, of course following the fall applications, which are typically broadcast applications on the surface of largely no-till or rotational no-till soils. So ag retailers have valuable products and services which can help keep phosphorus on cropland and out of waterways. Here's a list of some of those, along with average reductions in phosphorus losses based on published studies. There's lots of variability in these numbers, and the averages here, of course, based on soil type, slope, proximity to surface water, and other factors, but it gives us a sense of where we can make a difference. So cover crops, soil testing, grid or zone sampling, and variable rate application, and custom applications are revenue generating opportunities for ag retailers that also reduce phosphorus losses. We can also let farmers know when a broadcast application has been made so that they can get out there and get the application covered with light tillage. Applying only enough phosphorus for the following crop rather than the next several crops in rotation can also make a difference. So all of these things really feed the triple bottom line. So they help our environment, and they help our revenue as ag retailers, and they also help our yields and income as farmers. So today we're focusing on cover crops, and you'll hear from our presenters how cover crop sales are increasing, but still well below potential. The graph in the top there shows our survey data from ag retailers in the Western Lake Erie Basin through 2014, and then projects that growth trend if we continue on that trend out to 2022 for the Western Lake Erie Basin. Of course, we've got some challenges now with lower crop prices as well in terms of convincing farmers to make additional investments, but I think you'll hear from our speakers how these cover crops benefit farmers and learn more about how to present that return on investment to your customers. So our goal with Partnership for Ag Resource Management is to identify these revenue opportunities for ag retailers that help keep our valuable resources on cropland, help ag retailers promote those, and then track and report sales and estimate reductions in losses of phosphorus and soil and other inputs from cropland. We are making a difference and have a huge potential to make an enormous difference as these trends show. And we need to track and report those so that regulators and the public are aware of the improvements that we're making on a voluntary basis, using the power of the marketplace to drive improvements. So with that, I'd like to turn control back over to Jill to start our other presenters. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Tom. So yeah, next we'll hear from Dean Baas from MSU Extension and the Midwest Cover Crops Council.
Thank you, Jill and Tom. Appreciate having the opportunity to talk to the group this morning. Good morning, everyone. What I'd like to do today is I'm going to try to build a case for ag retailer promotion of cover crops. And I'll be honest, I'm going to give you some personal observations that I can't honestly say I've got a good study to back, but hopefully it'll at least get you thinking. And also there have been some recent cover crop surveys, one done by Conservation Technology Information Center and SARE organization, and then one that I was recently involved in with the Midwest Cover Crop Council. So I'm going to share a little bit of that data with you as well. So let's start out with a few personal observations. Originally, one of the things I was asked to talk about was cover crop benefits, and you can see the chart there that has all the wonderful benefits of cover crops, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those because I really believe that now the majority of farmers recognize the benefits that cover crops bring to soil health. I think part of that is due to the NRCS Soil Health Initiative, but we've been beating that drum for quite a while, and so I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to convince you that cover crops are good. I think there's enough studies and that information is out there. And further, I believe that farmers are now looking for assistance with cover crop use. I like to say they've drank the Kool-Aid, but they need help using them. They need direction, they need assistance. And to back that up, this is from the CTIC SARE survey. If you look at the what they're looking for benefits, the #1 desired benefit from cover crops from the users, almost 74%, is to increase soil organic matter. 66% of the non-users of cover crops also picked increasing soil organic matter. This is an interesting change if you think about it. Previous surveys, pretty much soil erosion was the #1 reason that people picked for a cover crop. I put a cover crop in because I want to keep the soil in place. And I think this is really an interesting change because now it's a change in perspective that I can use a cover crop to actually improve the soil I have, not just keep it from getting away from me. And so I think that kind of change in thinking has got people thinking more about cover crops and how can I use them in my system. Why do we talk about soil organic matter? I like to show this chart from the University of Minnesota. Over here at the beginning, this was probably like prairie native grasses. If you look at the soil organic matter at 100%, they started tillage. After 25 years, it had dropped to about 50% of the original organic matter. As they continued to till, it decreased even further. And at this point, permanent sod was put in. If you look at this curve, it is not returning as quickly to the original native organic matter level as it went away with the tillage. If you extrapolate this curve out, this is a long ways away before it gets back up to this level. So we've definitely decreased our soil organic matter with tillage over time. And so one of the things I like to throw out there as food for thought is, I think that the improvements in crop genetics have actually masked that decline in soil organic matter. It's been going down over time on a lot of farms and a lot of places, but with improved genetics, the yields have continued to improve. So there really wasn't a feeling that there's a problem. If I get more yield year after year, do I really have an issue with my farm? What it makes me wonder is, are the genetics going to surpass the soil's capacity to support the improvements? Are we going to be eventually reach a yield plateau where even though the crop has the ability to generate more yield, the soil doesn't have the ability to support that? And where this has implications to ag retailers is, how do you market and sell seed improvements if they can't be realized by the farmers? Why wouldn't I buy the Walmart of seeds if I can get the same yield out of that and pay a lower price than buying the high dollar seeds? So just want to throw that out there. Again, that's personal observation, but I think it is some food for thought. What is the value of that soil organic matter? Well, if you look at about 2 million pounds of soil in the top 6 inches, 1% soil organic matter is about 20,000 pounds. Just the nutrients in that 1% soil organic matter, and these prices are back probably about 2013, so they may have changed slightly, but I think it gives you a feel for what's going on. There's about 1,000 pounds of nitrogen, that's worth about $650. Phosphorus, 100 pounds at 52. Potassium, 100 pounds at 55. You've got sulfur, 100 pounds, worth about $50, and then there's a bunch of carbon in there at not real high value, $2 a ton, but that's worth 10 bucks. So the value of 1% soil organic matter as far as nutrients is around $800 an acre. So if you can add 1% soil organic matter, you can increase the nutrient value per acre to about $800. There's productivity associated with soil organic matter. There was a study in Michigan that showed that for every 1% soil organic matter, there was an increase. There was a 12% increase in crop yields. The baseline for the study was 170 bushel corn and 50 bushel soybeans, starting out at 3% and going to 4%, adding 1%. That's worth about $60 an acre for soybeans and about $80 an acre at current prices for corn with that increase in soil organic matter. Now, I have to qualify that. It's not possible to add 1% soil organic matter quickly. You're looking at probably 0.1% to 0.15% increase a year. So for soybeans, that's $6 to $9 a year. For corn, that's $8 to $12 a year. But the other thing to remember, this is like compound interest. First year it's 6 to 9. Second year it's 12 to 18. Third year it's 18 to 27. So year on year you take advantage of that increase. But there is a productivity component to soil organic matter. There's also a water storage value. It's estimated that for every 1% soil organic matter, it'll hold 1 acre-inch of water. The value of an acre-inch of water based on irrigation is about $12. Again, if you look at only a 1/10% addition per year, that's only $1.20. It would take you 10 years or even 20 years if you wanted to be able to get to the 2 acre-inches of water at $24. So under an irrigated situation where you can put on the water you need, this probably isn't as attractive. But let's consider what's been going on recently with current rainfall. This is a picture of 4 inches of rain in central Michigan in 2013. We're getting our rainfall in much harder events where we're getting it quicker in a shorter period of time. That soil organic matter gives you the capacity to hold more of the water that you see in this picture and keep it from running off. And I think that is definitely important, not only in an irrigated situation because you get some savings there, but is definitely important in a dryland situation where you want to be able to hold on to as much of that moisture as possible. So there's a soil organic matter benefit as far as water holding capacity. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. This is a study under drought conditions in Illinois with conventional tillage and no cover. With a year with 2.3 inches of rain, they got 82 bushels per acre. That same year with no-till, it was 124 bushels per acre, which was $160 per acre more having no-till in the system. If you add no-till plus annual ryegrass, it was 137, which is worth $209 per acre. And you have to kind of look at that not just for that drought year, but what's that mean if you look over a longer period of time? Let's say you only had the drought 1 year out of 20. If you take that and value it over that 20 years, that's still over $10 an acre increase per year, just having that insurance policy in your system of no-till and a cover crop to offset that drought year. We do have to talk that there are some potential negative effects that you have to manage the cover crops because they may excessively dry the soil in a dry spring. But there's ways that can be controlled. The solution is to kill the cover crop early to keep it from doing that. There is some management that you have to do to make sure that there aren't negative effects that would offset that over $10 per year savings. So, you know, I propose it's not just in the farmer's best interest to increase soil organic matter and soil health. I think there's productivity gains, there's resiliency benefits that can come from that. But I believe it's also in the ag retailer's best interest to assist the farmer in improving soil organic matter and soil health, and I think you need that to remain competitive, to keep your products competitive, to keep your services competitive. I said the farmers need assistance. Here's some survey information that backs that up. This is that same survey. This is cover crop users, the top cover crop challenge, time and labor required for planting and increased management. Again, I think this is something that the ag retailers can assist farmers with. They can provide those services. You know, let's face it, trying to put a cover crop in after corn or soybean harvest can be a challenge. One comment in a survey that I did, a farmer said, "So what do you want me to do, finish harvesting or put in cover crops?" That is a real issue, particularly as you get pushed later in the year, and then you have less time available. There's less time for cover crops to establish. I think that's a potential assistance that can come from ag retailers in providing those services so that it can be overlapped with harvesting. Establishing cover crops is an issue. Again, a lot of that is due to late harvests. I think there's some opportunities with aerial seeding, some opportunities with some of the new interseeding technologies that are being developed, including the high boy seeding and the Penn State seeder, that may also give you an opportunity to help farmers out by putting cover crops in prior to harvest and giving them a better chance at establishing. Of course, you can probably help with cover crop seed costs. I think that's always part of the equation for farmers, part of the economic component. For non-users, it was a lot of the same stuff. You can see time and labor again was an issue. In their case, number 2 was figuring out the right cover crop species. That was for my operation as the rest of that line there. Again, I think that's something that you can help farmers with. I think there's resources out there that you can use to help farmers figure out what's the best thing to use in their situation. And again, we've got another economic concern there. So my next slide is my slide to beat you guys up on. I'll only do it once, but I did a survey with through the North Central Soybean Research Program, and in that survey, CCAs and agronomists were asked how often they advise farmers to grow cover crops. The sample size was 268. Less than 25% said always or frequently. Over 75% responded that they sometimes or never advise farmers to grow cover crops. I think this is an area where we need some improvement, and to be honest, I think as extension people and researchers, we are also at fault because we have not provided you with the information to show how it can benefit your business, how you can deal with farmer questions, how you can deal with potential issues that could arise from advising farmers to use cover crops. So I know that there's a risk involved, and I think we have a responsibility to help you figure out how to minimize your risk as well as the farmer's risk. So I won't totally blame the retailers on that one, but I think there's an opportunity here both on the education and research side and also for your businesses. I was asked to talk a little bit about prevented planting just because of the type of year we've had. We've had excessive rainfall and prolonged ponding conditions this spring, and many fields have been unplanted. These acres should be managed to prevent further soil degradation and increase productivity for next year, and cover crops are an excellent option to do that. Producers should explore the benefits of planting a cover crop during the remainder of the season. You can capture nutrients, fix nitrogen, build organic matter, control weeds, erosion, improve soil quality. And the thing to consider is that when you plant cover crops in a prevented planting situation, you're extending considerably the cover crop growing period. So you have a lot more time to derive the benefits under that situation. So if you put those together, there's considerable yield potential for the following crop. And if you look at the potential prevented planting payment and improved yield potential following a full season cover crop, the economic potential for the whole rotation could be considerable. As far as selecting cover crops for prevented planting situation, it really depends on your goals. One goal may be to improve soil tilth and biological activity in the topsoil. Grasses usually provide the greatest amount of biomass, and grasses build soil organic matter most quickly. Some summer grasses such as sorghum sudan grass and millets are good choices for if you're going to do an early summer planting. The more familiar annual ryegrass cereal grains can be planted mid to late summer if that's your goal. You may also think about increasing permeability and decreasing compaction. In that case, deep-rooted cover crops can be used. with prevented planting acres, it's really advantageous with the tap-rooted crops because they have a much longer window to grow in. The tap roots actually get bigger with that extended growing season, so the benefits can be substantially greater than possible in a normal year. So we look at things such as brassicas, such as oilseed radish, turnip, rapeseed, canola. They all have the tap roots that help break up tillage pans and can improve the permeability, and they can also be excellent nitrogen scavengers, and they can be planted mid to late summer. If your goal is to build nitrogen, a legume or legume mix planted early in the summer may provide more than half of the required nitrogen for next year's corn crop. Cowpeas are an excellent choice for midsummer plantings. Consider things like hairy vetch, crimson clover, winter peas. They can be planted through late summer. If you're going to plant a legume, be sure to inoculate the seed so that you get the nitrogen fixation. If it's not if you're looking not to source more nitrogen but to preserve nitrogen, you can look at brassicas or grasses that can trap or scavenge. They can usually do over 40 pounds of residual nitrogen, and this protects water quality, and some of the scavenged nitrogen will be available to the succeeding cash crops while the rest will help with building soil organic matter. Let's not forget about mixes. Maybe you want to achieve multiple goals by planting the cover crop. So a mix of cover crop species could be of benefit to you. You can consider a mix that includes 2 or 3 of the plant classes that I just discussed above. Mixes will stimulate soil biological activity more quickly because of the diversity of crop and root types. And a mix of fibrous rooted grasses and a legume or brassica with a taproot will produce soil improvements throughout the soil profile. One caution on prevented planting using cover crops: producers are advised to check with the Farm Service Agency and Risk Management Agency on prevented planting requirements for cover crops and harvest restrictions for cover crops. We don't want people putting in cover crops out there and then losing their crop insurance because they weren't aware of some of the subtleties in those systems. So if you've got producers who are interested in cover crops and preventive planting, please have them talk to these agencies to make sure that they stay clean on the requirements for their crop insurance. I'd like to end with some cover crop resources. I know that was pretty quick and there's a lot of information in there, but I'd like to give you some places you can go to get additional information so you can learn more about cover crops or increase your knowledge of cover crops. But just before I do that, I want to show this chart. This is a Google Analytics that shows the cover crop searches over time from 2005 probably to about 2015. You can see that interest in cover crops is increasing as the searches have gone up. But what I find most intriguing about this chart is that every one of these spikes is in the fall of the year. People are going and looking for cover crop information in the fall of the year. And that's actually not good because that's getting a little too late. We'd rather see them doing it over the winter or in the spring so that they're planning ahead for it. And I think that's something where retailers can also help stimulate that thought process. I'm a member of the Midwest Cover Crops Council. I'm on the executive committee. It's a regional network of diverse cover crop resources that you can take advantage of. We call ourselves a loose collaboration. We do not have a formal nonprofit or anything like that. We're just a group that gets together and works together on cover crops. We don't really have a home as yet, but we're kind of working on that. We don't have a paid staff. We're currently a volunteer organization. And I like to tell people what all of that means is the people that are involved in the Midwest Cover Crop Council are really dedicated to cover crops. They wouldn't be a part of it because they're not getting paid for it, and it's not a a formal organization, so we really take advantage of collaboration. The group researches and consolidates and distributes cover crop information through its members, website, listserv, meetings, and products. The Midwest Cover Crop Council is made up of basically the North Central region, the 12 states in the North Central region, and Ontario is also part of it. I'll put in a pitch for my Ontario colleagues. They do a lot of good work up there, so when you're looking for cover crop information, think about looking towards the north, towards Canada, and see some of the good stuff that they have. What do we have to offer? We have cover crop resources. We have a website, an online decision tool. We have a field guide. We hold an annual meeting. We can give access to cover crop experts through the listserv, and we're available for collaboration for research, education, and extension. We have a website. It's at www.mccc.msu.edu. Has 40 pages of content and over 330 PDF documents. There's some statistics on the website. 120,000 people have visited since it was started. Last year, close to 28,000 people been visited from a lot of different countries. All 50 states, and as you'd guess, the top states are Midwest states. We have a web-based decision tool. This is a tool you can use. You can put in information about your state, your farm, the types of benefits you're looking for from cover crops, and it will just guide you through a selection process to look at what might work for what you're interested in. And then it also has additional information sheets that can be printed that give you information for planting and planting depths and other information about the cover crops you're interested in. We've put out a field guide which is available through the education store at Purdue University. The first edition sold close to 30,000 copies. We released the second edition September 22 of last year. We added Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, North Dakota, and South Dakota to round out the North Central region. Some of the information was updated and some new information added. We printed 20,000 copies and promptly sold out of those 20,000 copies. We're in a second printing of another 15,000 copies and are looking at developing an iPad application next. We hold an annual meeting, usually somewhere within the North Central region or Ontario. It's not always, but we've been trying to hold it in conjunction with another cover crop event. It's a combination business, technical, education, and practical sessions. It's attended by a pretty diverse audience, including a lot of farmers. Recently, attendance has been reaching roughly 200 to 300. And the next meeting will be held in Wisconsin in 2016, sometime probably in February. We have a listserv. There's 466 subscribers on the listserv. This is not a junk mail listserv. I encourage everybody to sign up for it. Pretty much the only thing that the only things you'll get on it are issues associated with cover crops and notification of Midwest Cover Crop Council activities. When you're a subscriber, you can post a question to the listserv. That gives you access to cover crop experts and users. And I have to be honest, I'm always totally amazed when someone puts a question to the listserv. I would guess that they usually get a response within about 2 hours, and they'll have multiple responses by the end of the day from people all over the region that have insight into what's being asked. So I encourage everybody to sign up for the listserv. You can do that on the homepage of the Midwest Cover Crop Council, and it also is a good place to see what current issues there are with cover crops, crop insurance, and a lot of those types of things are also posted on the listserv. So I'm going to stop there. I know it was a lot of information. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions at the end, and I will give it back to Jill.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dean. So yeah, we're going to have Steve Groff up next.
Okay, Jill, can you hear me?
Yes, you sound great.
Awesome. Okay, I'm just gonna put the things up here, and we should be ready to go right about now. How does that look?
I
Do you see my title slide up?
think it's still waiting to load.
Okay.
Oh, and
Well,
yeah. Yep,
great.
it's good to go.
Thank you all for joining today. This whole cover crop topic certainly has generated a lot of interest, and I'm aware that we have not only ag retailers but also some other groups, farmers and researchers and universities and so forth. So I appreciate this opportunity to talk. And Dean, you did an excellent job in putting a great foundation out. You talked about some of the pollutant problem. I'm not going to spend much time on that at all. I will mention, though, in the context of that, of how and I'm just going to use the word pollution. I know we kind of hate that or maybe react to that word, but anything that leaves our farms, that should be on our farms, when it leaves it and gets in the water, that is a pollutant. And I know there's certain standards for that, and please understand I'm not an environmental wacko or anything like that, but we do have a responsibility to the general public and to society. And I think when people see dust storms, when people see serious soil erosion, these are some things that we can do better on in agriculture. And the public perception of agriculture, sometimes we dismiss that as farmers. The reality of it is, as we move on, as we move forward as a society, with the advent of social media and everything like that, these type of things the negative things get thrown around very quickly. And I think the cover crops is something that when we understand and when we help our non-farming neighbors understand what cover crops can do, my experience has been they're very quick to understand it. When the public sees green fields in the fall or the winter, they can understand that that farmer is doing something. If it's something other than like a winter grain or like wheat or something like that, that's something that the general public can see. So I think it's something for us to consider, not just the polluted problem, but also how that relates to the public perception of agriculture. And I do bring this up because I am from the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and I'm sure all of you have heard about the Chesapeake Bay, and it's been under the microscope for quite a few years now. And part of it is because there is a lot of people live in that region, a lot of non-farming people. And the Chesapeake Bay itself is used by a lot of non-farming people. So when these issues come up, it's very real. And some of the problem has been just too much nutrients and sediment going in that water. In 2005, cover crops were used on 5% of that region. And I'm going to tell you what it is currently at the end of my presentation. But the Chesapeake Bay has kind of been dubbed the pilot project for the nation. And I know we each live in our little or big or significant watershed. I know a lot of you probably have watersheds where you have unique issues. But as we look at this, and as we look at the Mississippi watershed that is now kind of the focus is swinging west to that, and then you have around Great Lakes where a lot of us are from today tuning in here. We had the Toledo crisis last year. It's kind of putting it on the radar. And there in the lower right-hand corner, I've listed that currently only about 2% of the Mississippi watershed is using cover crops. So there's certainly a huge opportunity there to be able to use cover crops more frequently. Now, I'm a farmer, and I talk to farmers frequently and give presentations, and that was outlined in some of the charts that Dean showed. A lot of farmers say, I like these cover crops, but I don't have time, and I don't have any available planting window. And probably the most frequently thing I hear is, well, show me the money. Do they pay? And I would just like to say one of the things about the timing of today is in areas that have prevent planting situations, which is quite numerous this year, particularly in the Midwest, And those who have a small grain that comes off, and if they're not planting double crop soybeans or something, they do have time to plant, plenty of time. So there's no excuse for some of what I call the kind of the no-brainer opportunities of cover cropping, and some of them are before us right now. I would also like to say that the secret to success, the secret to making cover crops valuable to your farm is to treat them like your cash crops. There's no farmer that is not going to be ready to plant corn on the first day it's fit to plant corn in his area. And I would challenge farmers that when it's the first day, you can plant a cover crop. If it's following the combine, hiring a retired neighbor, or maybe a younger person growing up, give them a chance to get some tractor time. Make that happen. I've seen time and time again farmers who experience the benefits of cover crops, where they originally said that they don't have time, somehow they find the time to do it once they experience it. So if you can remember anything today, if you treat your cover crops like your cash crops, you're going to stand a good chance of making them successful. Some of the important questions to ask here when we're looking at cover crops, and I'm not going to get into many details today, this is just some big picture thinking, but these are important questions here. What are you trying to accomplish? I get the question from people, they say, well, what cover crops do I plant? Well, I have to go through a series of questions back to help them understand what cover crop to plant, because I am going to mention a few specific cover crops, but there's literally probably, I could say, a dozen or more cover crops that I would consider very popular, and then another 24 that are out there and being utilized by farmers. Not only that, then you can start crafting your own mixes, and that makes it somewhat complicated. I like to say that cover crops is a very simple concept, but it's very complicated to make it work properly in any given field. So what are you trying to accomplish is the first question. Then when is your planting window? The planting window will determine a lot of times the species that you plant, as well as what are you trying to accomplish. But I think thirdly here, there needs to be a commitment to making this work. And a lot of times with the good press that cover crops have received in the last couple years, farmers will read an article and they say, yep, I think I need to do that. I'm going to go buy me some cover crop seed. And they go out and they really don't know what they're doing. You just think about all the cumulative knowledge that we have to plant corn or soybeans or wheat, with all the varieties that are out there and how you treat that, how you fertilize everything. You need to apply the same tenacity to cover crops. That's what I mean by being willing to make the whole thing work. I want to go through a little case study here. This was in 2013. There was a prevented plant field in Iowa where they had put out 60 pounds of nitrogen, and then they weren't able to get the corn planted in that field. So around the first week of August, they planted some radishes and got a good stand established. Well, the point here was, how much fertilizer do we need the following year if we plant a cover crop that can hold it, scavenge it, hold it, and give it back to the succeeding cash crop? And if you see this chart here, we put out 5 different rates of nitrogen, and you always have to use a 0 so you can kind of see what you're working with. But in this instance, now I got to tell you, this is a very high producing field, but only 50 pounds of nitrogen was needed the following year to reach optimal yields. And this isn't going to work every time in every field, but here is an example that it does occur sometimes. And what we're doing with the cover crop here is we're holding that nitrogen, keeping it in the field, and letting it flush down the drain and losing it and having it become a pollutant. This is money in the bank. This is how cover crops can pay. And especially now with the areas that have prevent plant opportunities for cover crops, I can pretty much assure you that if they're ever going to pay in dollars and cents that is tangible, this is an opportunity for it. So in this case here, it saved 100 pounds of nitrogen, and basically just on the fertilizer alone was a $15 profit. And then we all know all the other benefits that Dean outlined. What's the value of organic matter and water holder capacity? We know it's net positive. It's hard to put a number to that sometimes, but we know it's net positive. that can be added on here. So we're starting to get a return on investment that's tangible that we can see. Spent a little time on some innovative things now that are kind of on the cusp of cover cropping, and one of them was mentioned already, interseeding cover crops. This term is generally associated when we're going in the corns around knee-high, and we're planting a cover crop. A lot of places, a barrier to cover cropping is there's just no time in the fall, especially north of I-80 in particular. And so this is an option here to get our cover crops planted during the season, or get them planted earlier. And there's different equipment designs coming out now. Penn State University is credited to developing the actual concept of this. They're 5 years into it now, doing an excellent job of not only doing the research, but actually producing some equipment. There's other manufacturers as well, like Dawn Equipment, are having some prototypes now. And there's farmers who rig up some of their own machines to do this. So we found it's important to get the seed in the ground to have a consistent stand. Stand establishment is I would have to say, is generally better than aerial seeding. And so here we can possibly use a little lower seeding rates, but more importantly, get a more consistent stand. Farmers are doing this in combination with nitrogen application as well, like side dressing nitrogen. So when you start rigging up some applicators like this, it becomes very economical. The goal is that by the time harvest time, your cover crop's growing. When the corn starts to dry down, the cover crop comes back to life after going through kind of a dormant state over summer, and you're able to get your cover crop essentially up to 1 month earlier. It varies by region and year. But the first question people ask is, well, what kind of yield am I sacrificing by having another plant? Because we've been taught that anything growing out there is like a weed. Well, we haven't seen a yield loss. That's an average. There have been occasional plots that have seen some yield losses, but on average, we have a yield gain. So that's certainly something I would encourage us all, you all to look into. I'll just briefly mention two other ways, and this is where some of the ag retailers come in here. There's some that are outfitting some of their high clearance sprayers with seeding equipment, and that's another way to be able to get a cover crop established earlier. I will mention the radish here that I'm very familiar with. I've been working with it since 2001, and the thing that's unique about radishes is they're able to take up more nutrients quicker in the fall, provided you get them planted in their window of opportunity. And for most of the area we're talking about today, you need to get them planted by the middle of September. I know that eliminates a lot of acres, but where you can do it, it's definitely a cover crop that really takes up nutrients and then gives it back the next year. Later on, then you gotta use some other cover crops, and we usually wind up the year with cereal rye because of its winter hardiness and so forth. But the radish has consistently shown yield increases after they're planted, so that's one of the reasons why they've been so popular. Nitrogen, as we all know, is kind of an escape artist. It leaves with water, and it can go down on the ground, it can wash off. Sulfur as well. It's not been mentioned a lot, but sulfur is an important nutrient that we need to keep in mind. It's essentially free to leave. We don't take it up in the plant roots, especially when the soils are wet. So if we have our cover crops growing, and there are many other ways to establish them, but if we have them growing there, these nutrients will not leave. They will stay in the farm where they should be, where they're meant to be. So getting back to my region of the Chesapeake Bay, here in 2014, after a lot of education and some incentives, the state of Maryland has a very aggressive incentive program of providing cost share to farmers. There's 18% of these farm acres now are using cover crops. And that has been picked up in the monitoring the water. It's not as good as their target goals were, but if you see here over time, the nitrogen loads have decreased, and phosphorus as well. So these are tangible evidences where, in this case, cover crops, and I could say too, just a more judicious way of applying our fertilizers helped as well. So for farmers, I like to say, remember all that fertilizer you paid for? Well, if you don't use it in your plants, it's money down the drain and it becomes a pollutant. If we're able to save it, we can save fertilizer, and if we can actually use less nitrogen or whatever we're putting on, that helps into our profitability. But you may be an ag retailer who sells fertilizer, and you say, well, I'm not sure about this here, Steve. You're saying use less fertilizer. That's my bread and butter. I understand that. But I also would challenge you to consider, where is the future in agriculture headed? I think we all agree that the future is not more fertilizer. It's judicious use of it. In the context of cover crops, here's where you have the opportunity to be the leader in your area, to get the cover crop expertise, to spend the effort to work with people who know what they're doing, to get up to speed, to do the testing in the local area, to be a seed supplier. As far as, what are the margins in cover crops? Well, the cover crop industry is just developing. It's kind of forging its new ground. And there is, from a cover crop seed supplier standpoint, there's opportunity there for that. Then the other thing is to work with some of these innovative equipment designs, to have that available, to have a rental unit or things like that you can do. Question also comes up recently is, how does the lower grain prices affect the sales of cover crop seeds? What, in my experience in marketing cover crop seeds, the experienced cover croppers continue to buy. They have seen the benefits, they understand it, they continue to put cover crops in. But for newcomers, they're the ones who are maybe questioning a little bit more. So this is where education is critical to help them understand how to maximize those benefits. And more there is cost share for new cover croppers available. You do have to sometimes sign up well in advance, but it is something that if you're interested and you put a little time and effort to see what's available in your local area, there is some money out there to help. What are the wild cards here? And this is kind of from again, my experience and what I am involved with here. One of the things that we noticed back in 2008, 2009, when fertilizer prices went up, is that helped create a spike of interest in cover crops, because there is a relationship between fertilizer savings and so forth and using cover crops. The management of that is somewhat complex, but there's a relationship there. So if fertilizer prices do increase for whatever reason, I'm pretty certain there's going to be an increased interest in cover crops. But a bigger one might be government regulations. I think we all know that regulations will not get less, they'll probably get more. Will there be cover crop incentives tied into qualification for subsidies? What about taxing fertilizer? That's been talked about, or an offsetting tax by cost sharing of cover crops. Crop insurance incentives is related to cover crops. I've been to DC a couple times and have talked to the folks down there. These are active discussions, what you see here. I didn't just pull these out of the air. This is active discussions that are being talked about now. And I feel my approach is, let's show some due diligence now what we're doing, so the regulations will be a little bit more reasonable. And also, here's some other things of interest that you may or may not know about, but it is currently underway. There are quite a few large corporations establishing what they call fertilizer optimization plans. Sometimes they're known by different names, but Walmart has a fertilizer optimization plan out there that they're starting to implement for some of their farmers that grow produce and grow food that they sell. Smithfield Foods is the biggest supplier to Walmart for pork products, and I think they're the biggest in the nation, if not the world, in that. And there's different other Coca-Cola, Kellogg's, and there's other ones out there that they're looking into this. So I see this as opportunity, even for a farmer out there, that they may be able to, in their supply chain, be able to supply this market. And just wrapping it up here, here's another chart that comes out of the same study that Dean was referring to. This is the use of cover crops. This is tracking farmers who have used cover crops for the last 6 or more years. What is interesting about this is farmers who started out back 5, 6 years ago with around 100 acres of cover crops. They're now planting about 300 acres of cover crops. So once a farmer understands the value of it, the trend is clearly they plant more and more every year. This to me is a very, very important chart. It's an indicator of what direction we're headed. I think for ag retailers and farmers alike, we see where the trends are going. It's time to jump on board. My version of the 21st century agriculture is kind of a merging of technology and biology. We have all these cool little gizmos and gadgets that we can farm with now, but when we use the cover crops with like an instance would be precision planted cover crops, using high-tech machines of spreading it and so forth. All this I think is just a wonderful time of agriculture to experience this. Increased profitability, I feel, is a result of a more resilient soil that can better handle these weather extremes that we're talking about. I think there's a lot, that's a loaded statement there, and I think it's very, very real. And I believe that agriculture pollution can be mitigated. I think we can do a better job as farmers. There's a lot of room for improvement there. And then the public perception, I think sometimes we as farmers find ourselves in the defensive. I feel that the cover crop story can resound well with the public. It's not hard to explain. And when you tell people that when you see a farmer who has green fields in the fall, he's doing the right thing for not only his farm, but also for society and keeping nutrients where they're supposed to be. And I also like to say cover crops are greening the planet one field at a time. So I believe opportunity knocks for those who embrace it, but it's going to take some time and effort to do that. So with that, I thank you very much for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. Well, so right now I'm just going to turn it back over to Tom for a quick interlude before our Q&A.
Thanks, Jill. Can you see my screen now?
Yep, you're good.
Great. So I had mentioned that our goal with our Partnership for Ag Resource Management project is to identify revenue opportunities for ag retailers that also help keep our valuable resources on cropland. And we want to help promote those and then track and report sales and estimates of reductions in phosphorus and other inputs leaving cropland to document that we are making a difference with these voluntary approaches. So on our website, we have a number of resources. One of them is a tip sheet that's specifically designed to help inform that conversation between the ag retailer and the farmer about the benefits of cover crops. So you can go to partnershipfarm.org and find that cover crop tip sheet. Another resource that we have available in hard copy is a wallet card that talks about do's and don'ts for keeping phosphorus on cropland. And there's an order form on our website for those wallet cards. We've distributed over 8,000 of them to date in the Western Lake Erie Basin, and those are available to you free of charge. So you can go onto the website and place an order for these and then use these with your customers. And of course they talk about cover crops as one of the options, as one of the do's. So please visit our website and take advantage of the resources available to you there. And then finally, I wanted to thank our funders and our collaborators. We've been working on this project since 2010 with funding from the Great Lakes Protection Fund, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and NRCS, and with help from these other organizations. And then also thank our participating ag retailers. So these are the companies that we worked with during our pilot in the Western Lake Erie Basin who helped us, giving us input in getting the project up and running, and then have helped us every year by providing data on their acres of these products and services that we're selling so we could track those trends. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Jill, to moderate questions.
Great. Thanks, Tom. So yeah, we have ample time for Q&A. I would encourage you attendees to enter your questions into the chat box, which is on your screen, and indicate which speaker the question is directed to. Okay, so we have a question. What about timing at this point for planting cover crops in prevented planting? Let's see, Dean, can you,
Well, I can.
or Steve, yeah?
Steve can go on that one.
Yeah, Steve, go for it.
Well, my comment to that, not to be smart, but as soon as it's dried out, I know a lot of places are still too wet, but you have an opportunity now to really maximize what cover crops can do. So my quick answer is as soon as possible. Now that can determine then what species you could use. Our window of summer annuals is kind of winding down, but we probably have 2-3 weeks for sorghum Sudan type stuff, uh, and the millets and so forth. We probably have 2 or 3 weeks. You probably could get a better answer to that in your local area. It depends if you're more in the north or more in the south, of course. But even planting radishes now is going to be good. They're really going to have an opportunity to root down. We've dug out radish roots 6 feet deep that were planted in the middle of August, and so it's amazing how they can go down that far and bring up and hold nutrients. But the nice thing about getting in there at this time of year is your options are very, very wide. That can also be confusing and complex to people, but that's why you need to talk with someone who either has experience in your area or can recommend some of the mixes or some of the species. So maybe Dean, you can follow up.
I pretty much echo everything you said, Steve. You know, I agree, get it in as quick as you can, but then pay attention to the species as far as the recommended planting windows. You don't want to be putting in something that's not going to grow well at that period, and get something in there and get it covered.
If I could follow up with one thing, and that is, what about, I have these 1 to 2, 3, 5 acre potholes or whatever you call them, that is either, it might be accessible, it may not be to a growing crop. That's going to be up to each individual producer, but if that pothole dries out, that low spot, wet spot dries out enough, it would be worth it, in my opinion, to drive down a few rows of corn or soybeans to get to it. I have heard, this has not been like replicated and university or research tested, but I have heard frequently farmers who have been able to get in and plant some of these wet spots at this time of year have noticed a multi-year effect after that, especially getting a deep-rooted cover crop in there if you can do it this early. So that's going to be up to each individual farmer, but it's something to consider if you have the equipment and can get in and just plant some of these partial areas that were drowned out. So I just wanted to mention that as another opportunity to get cover crops, even though you may not be able to do the whole field or just do partial fields that were flooded.
Awesome. Let's see, getting a couple more questions. How about this? Maybe Dean, you could field this one. Is there a round number or range of dollars per acre that we can use in terms of cover crop benefits that captures fertility, soil retention, soil moisture, and soil health benefits?
I sure wish there was. You know, this is one of our biggest challenge areas because in the past, most of the work on cover crops has been done quantifying the benefits, but not really going after that economic component.
Mm-hmm.
And we hear this at meetings from farmers, and we're really encouraging people now to add an economic component to any cover crop research that they do. It's so variable dependent on where you're currently at, how well does a cover crop get established, what the conditions are. And I think part of it is not really wanting to get people's hopes up, and then because of something that's totally out of their control, they don't realize that savings or that value. So I wish there was. I don't know, do you have a number, Steve?
Well, I'll answer it this way, and this is a different way of looking at it. It's more of a perception. As I've observed, if you would look at maybe the average all-out spending that farmers do per acre of cover crops, which includes seed and planting, falls in the $25 to $35 an acre range. I think that's a pretty solid average. Of course, there's lower and there's higher. So if we look at all in, the cost to plant a cover crop at $25 to $35 an acre, that tells me that farmers perceive that that's what they're getting out of it. That's a different way of looking at it, but I think that is an appropriate way to look at it. And the other thing too is you have to understand that we very easily accept, if it's dry or it's wet, that my crop didn't perform. Is anybody blaming the seed corn or the soybeans for not growing because they had way too much water this year, or if it gets too dry? And this is why I say treat your cover crops like your cash crops, and I mean benefits, and also there are years where cover crops do not pay. That is a reality. There are years, as Dean pointed out in his data, that you could argue that cover crops pay for 5 to 10 years of yield increase in 1 year. That's the way you have to look at cover crops. I say look at cover crops from a 10-year perspective, just like we do our cash crops. And then I think that puts us in the ballpark of how we should be thinking about it.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to follow up on that, on the value that Steve was talking about. In one of our surveys, we asked the non-cover crop users what they're willing to pay for cover crops, and it falls in the range that Steve said. What's interesting is if you ask cover crop users, they were willing to pay $40 an acre. They were above it. So once you get someone using a cover crop, they see more and more value in the use of a cover crop and are actually willing to pay more than non-users. I thought that was interesting data.
Awesome. Let's see. How about, I think this one will be for you, Steve. What's the best way to ensure the best stand if seeding by plane into a standing crop?
Well, I wish there was, again, that's one of those questions that I wish I could give you a straight up answer on that. I guess my smart aleck answer is it depends on the weather, because that has a lot to do with it. Ideally, you have moist ground, you aerial seed, it rains for 1 day and it rains again 3 days later. If that occurs and you don't have a lot of residue down there where seeds are sitting top of the residue and can't really get into the soil, you stand a really good chance of success. Aerial seeding is successful enough that a lot of people do it, but it also carries with it some complete failures on occasion. And sometimes it's going to be up to the farmer to take the risk. If it's bone dry and you aerial seed, there's no chance anything's going to grow until you get rain. And sometimes a 2/10 shower is the worst thing possible, because it can sprout it and then it dries up quick enough before the plant can get rooted and it dies. So I think it's important that we understand the risk we're taking with that. And so what can you do? It's, up your seeding rates a little bit, of course, is kind of a standard recommendation for aerial seeding compared to drilling in the ground. Um, Again, there's a variable too. You have to understand your risk is a little higher if you're a no-till farmer and have residue down there that's not broken down, like corn stalks or whatever from the year before. Your chance of success is lowered. So it's important to understand the risk. As far as increasing your odds, the biggest thing is trying to work with the weather, but that's almost impossible sometimes because the planes are only available on certain days and when they're in certain areas. So I know there's been a lot of talk and work trying to put different sort of amendments on the seed to make them attract moisture, but the problem is you start jacking up the cost to do that, then you got to put lower seeding rates, and then it's kind of a vicious cycle there. So unless, Dean, if you have a magic formula, I'd like to hear it.
I concur with you on all those. I've done some aerial seeding research projects, and timely moisture, it's highly dependent on timely moisture. I also have seen the residue effects. I was really surprised at how the amount of residue can really impact that establishment. Had the same thing, had a little rain enough to sprout it, and then it was dry, so it died. Then I've also seen it where, like with cereal rye, you put it on and you don't see a thing in the fall, but you got a nice stand in the spring. So my other recommendation is, just because you don't see anything in the fall, don't rip the field up. You might be surprised what will actually be there in the spring. But it's really dependent on moisture and residue, I think, are two of the big factors.
Awesome. Let's see, we got one more question. As you both know, the PARM team, the Partnership for Ag Resource Management, we're specifically targeting the Great Lakes Basin. So, for the audience we have today, I think, Dean, this one maybe you could field the best. What would you say is the best cover crop selection tool for the Great Lakes Basin or the Upper Midwest?
Well, I'm partial to the selector tool on the Midwest Cover Crop Council website, probably because I developed it. So I'm probably not real unbiased. I think that's a good tool. There's a number of tools out there, and I think people should kind of play with all of them, see which ones give them the information they're looking for. I think that one's a good one. I think some of the selection information in the field guide. There's information in the SARE book, Managing Cover Crops Profitably. I think they're all good resources, and it's usually good to get multiple information from multiple sources. But I think the one on the Midwest Cover Crop Council can give you at least a good starting point to maybe investigate some cover crops further. I'd be interested in Steve's opinion.
Well, I would have to agree with you here because you have done most of your suggestions based on the region we're talking about today. There's some other tools out there. I think the NRCS has one. There's some other companies that have tools that are available to use. But it really comes down to what works on your farm. And I feel that farmers need to step up. If you're serious about cover cropping, yeah, use these tools as a primer, and they're very good to get started. But you need to step up and do a little bit of just experimenting or do some testing in your own farm. Go with something you feel is comfortable, and then tweak it from there. Almost every veteran cover cropper I know is not using the same program that he did 5 years ago. It's a moving target. It's a learning curve, but it's also a learning experience. And I think that's what's so cool about this is I have talked to some farmers who felt that the whole cover cropping thing has rejuvenated their whole agricultural interest and experience because for some people, they love the challenge of some additional management required. Other people, that scares them. and I understand that, and you have to kind of lead them by their hands. But that's where the ag retailers come in to help. There's that element. So these tools are very, very helpful, but use them as a starting point, and then learn and observe yourself what works on your farm. I'll close with this, and this is a little over the top statement, but it makes a point. Choosing your cover crops on your farm is kind of like choosing your spouse, because you got to do what works for you, and that's just something that I think does hold some water, something to think about.
Thank
And
you.
I'll get on one of my soapboxes real quick here. Plant a control without cover crops. Make sure what you think you're seeing is coming from the cover crop, and more importantly, make sure that what you don't like is coming from the cover crop. There's too much comparison of, well, I had a field down the road that I didn't use them on, and I had put them on this field, and it did badly, and the other field did good. You can't do it that way. So it doesn't have to be a big area, but at least give yourself a strip somewhere where you can stand there and look at it and decide whether the cover crop's doing what you think it's doing or that it's not doing what you think it's doing. So I'll get off that soapbox, but cover crops I think have been both credited and blamed for things that they don't deserve either way.
Excellent point, Dean.
Awesome. Well, with those closing statements, and thank you, Dean and Steve, for tag teaming the answers to those questions. But yeah, with that, we're at our time, and so I wanted to thank everyone again for attending today's webinar. We hope you found it very useful and informative. I want to especially thank our fantastic speakers, Dean Baas and Steve Groff, for sharing their insights and very memorable things to take with us. Reminder to please look for an email after today's webinar with a webinar evaluation form and a form to fill out if you want to earn those 2.5 CCA CEU points for attending this webinar. Once again, the webinar recording will be made available on partnershipfarm.org in the coming week as well. But with that, I just want to thank you all again for joining us and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.